Hi, everyone. Thanks for watching this video. This is another video about talking utilities. I'm Danny Katz, Executive Director of COPERG, a statewide consumer watchdog. And today we are talking about a docket or a decision that's going to be made regarding Xcel Energy, one of our large utilities here in Colorado, and what they're going to do in terms of investing in energy efficiency, electric vehicles, and clean heat, things like heat pumps. I got a couple of people with me today, experts who are very involved in the intricacies of the Public Utilities Commission process. I'll have them introduce themselves in just a minute here. What we're going to do is I'll just give some quick background on what the overall docket or decision process is. And then we'll have each of them talk a little bit about specific, I'm going to call them buckets, specific areas that this docket is going to dig into. This is a big deal because, if you know anything about the Public Utilities Commission, so a Public Utilities Commission exists to basically, watchdog a process, especially when you have a for-profit utility that has a, kind of a monopoly in a particular territory. It's important that we have a regulator, somebody to stand up and watch out for consumers and make sure that that utility is making decisions in the public interest, making sure that our energy and our heat is safe, it's reliable, it's cost effective. And so this is especially important with a for-profit utility because sometimes their financial incentives can take them in directions that don't always overlap nicely with what would be in their customer or public interest. And so we have the PUC, this state regulatory body that's going to have to review Xcel's plans. And this time around, Xcel, the docket is combining a couple of different big plans. Well, one of which is on the what we call the energy efficiency side of things. One of which is around electric vehicles, and a third big piece is around building electrification, making our homes use more electricity, especially when it comes to heat. And so this is a monster docket, a monster decision. It's going to take a long time. We probably won't have a decision until the winter or early spring. But it just kicked off. And so we want to give you all a sense of kind of what's at stake, what will be talked about, what will advocates be looking for in this process. And so, as I said, joined by three great guys who are going to help us walk through what's at stake here, one issue at a time. So let's start with the transportation electrification piece of it, the electric vehicle piece. I'm joined by Joe from Sierra Club. Joe, if you just introduce yourself a little bit on Sierra Club and kind of what is this electric vehicle component of this docket all about?
Sure. Thanks, Danny. Again, I'm Joe Hulso, senior attorney at Sierra Club. Sierra Club's mission is to protect human health and the environment. Yes, you mentioned the Transportation Electrification Plan, or TEP, as we call it in utility land. It describes all the policies, programs that Xcel is going to roll out over the next 4 years to support adoption of electric vehicles. The big thing is the build out of charging stations, the refueling infrastructure for EVs or electric vehicles. Through incentives or rebates, Xcel can reduce the cost to build those stations. Simple example is a rebate to install a home charging station, say in your garage, and that's likely where most people do their charging if they own an electric vehicle, or a rebate to an operator of a commercial fast charging station along a highway or at a truck stop. The other big piece of the TEP is what we call managed charging, trying to get people to plug in their EVs at the right times. An EV is just a battery on wheels, controlling when we charge them, or better yet, enabling them to send power back to the grid when we need it. We can support grid-wide benefits for every Xcel customer, whether they drive an EV or they drive an F-150. Just to give you a sense of scale, Xcel proposes to spend about $225 million across 7 programs within this TEP, which is the third TEP filing for Xcel.
Okay. So obviously implicit in this is some idea that a utility should be helping people try to convert or switch over to electric vehicles. Why is that important? I guess big picture, why is it important that more people in Colorado are driving electric vehicles and have access to, this charging?
Yeah, so that's right. Excel is required to put this plan together under a state law we helped pass in 2019. The premise of it is that utilities are natural partners in the EV transition, and we want them to be proactive about it. The reason is we got a lot of big problems in the world. Most are connected to our energy transportation system. EVs are a big part of the solution. For example, affordability issues largely driven by fuel and energy costs. EVs are cheap to fuel. They're increasingly cheap to buy and own, especially over their lifetime. Gas cars and trucks also a major driver of our air pollution issues in the Front Range and climate change. EVs have no tailpipe emissions. They make more efficient use of energy. They can be used to help integrate more wind and solar on the grid. So we need more. We need them fast. People won't make the switch if they don't think they can fuel them with charging infrastructure. So reliable, convenient charging is one of the biggest barriers to EV adoption, um, one of our biggest challenges to tackle. That's true for everyday drivers, for businesses, for fleet owners. And so that's where the TEP comes in, is trying to support access to convenient, reliable charging and managing use of that charging.
So then, so this plan, this proposal that Xcel's putting together is really kind of, I think, a 3 to 4 year window, right? It's kind of like, what are they going to do over the next couple of years? So then what would you like to see out of it when there's a decision come winter, spring? What does success look like? What are a couple, maybe not everything, but a couple of the things you're hoping to see come from this?
Yeah, so you're right. It's a 4-year plan. Um, Success starts with securing a strong, equitable plan. But I want to emphasize that's just the start. We need the plan to deliver. We want to see fully booked programs, fast and efficient delivery of projects, be participants, complete use of budgets. And so winning the win down the road is really the biggest thing. And I think the way that looks in 4 years is more EVs on the road, more wind and solar on the grid, more investment in our communities, cleaner air, less asthma attacks, kids riding on quiet, emission-free school buses. So, you know, the TEP is a big part of Colorado continuing to be a leader in EV adoption, making progress in the face of a hostile federal administration, setting the stage for the state to adopt other ambitious complementary these. In terms of what I want to see adopted, I mean, the no-brainer answer is the TEP targeting the worst of the pain points for EV drivers, like just putting maximum effort into deploying charging where it's needed at the home, that we're filling gaps in the public charging system. We're doing so with an eye towards those that need the support the most. That's number one. The second is this is Excel's third TEP, as I said. We're 6 years into this journey. Many of these programs are established. That means we can look at what's working and what's not. Excel's generally underspent on its budgets under its programs. So number two is working out the kinks. What makes this easier for people to participate in? And then the third thing I want to see is just going all in on managed charging. I said an EV is nothing more than mobile storage. We want scalable, frictionless programs that harness the power of EVs as grid assets. And we want Xcel to take things a step further to support discharge of power back to the grid. School buses, for example, are a real low-hanging fruit in that area. The state of the year is getting hotter. We're increasingly have more of those hot days. EVs are part of the solution. That problem and numerous other grid issues that we're going to increasingly see with climate change.
Sure. I mean, two quick follow-up questions, and you might not know the exact answer to this. You mentioned gaps in the charging system. So I think a lot of people, they're home, they go, okay, one way to charge is just at my home. But a lot of people don't maybe have a garage, or they live in an apartment or whatnot. So when you say gaps, are there specific gaps that have really been sort of brought to light in the last few years?
Yeah, so you're right about home charging. The common stat is 80% of the charging you're going to do is at home. That assumes you have access to charging at home, though, right? For a long time, I lived in an apartment building where I wouldn't have had control over my parking area, even if I'd had a dedicated space to install charging. A big component of the residential part of this program focuses on multi-unit dwellings, so people can have charging at home, regardless of what type of home they live in. That's a big component. Um, and then public charging, right. The biggest area there is really ensuring that we have fast charging along highways to enable distance travel. That's really when people experience what we call range anxiety, which is the
Yeah,
hesitation people have about purchasing an EV, or even once they have one, using it for longer trips. And the state has done great work on mapping where we need these charging stations. And so identifying what gaps yet need to be filled is actually not that hard. The real trick is ensuring Excel's program plays nice with state programs. We have a great state incentive program for fast charging and making sure they work together and that they can sort of stretch each other's funds and leverage one another so that we're making efficient use of this money.
Next question on managed charging, if you could. So managed charging, you talked a little bit about school buses. I mean, part of this, I understand this kind of two ways. One is taking advantage of the energy we produce by getting it into batteries that maybe we can then pull from later. I've heard that as one piece, but also just making sure people are charging at the quote unquote right times. What can you talk just a little bit more about, like what would be great managed charging in your mind?
Yeah, let me give it to you in the form of an example about somebody who owns a passenger EV. A bad thing is coming home and plugging in immediately after you get home from work, say in that 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. window, and starting your charging then when everyone is coming home from work and turning on every other thing in their house, and maybe turning up the air conditioning if they've been away for the day, or turning up the heat if it's wintertime. That exacerbates system peak on the grid in an unhelpful way. Better is plugging in when you get home, but being part of a program or programming your car such that it doesn't start charging until, say, midnight. And you complete your charging between midnight and 6 a.m., 9 and 8 a.m., when people tend to be asleep and not using every other thing in their home. We're making more efficient use of the grid that way, right? By taking advantage of the what we've built to, which is the expected peak, but really filling in the gaps in demand. So more efficient use of the system we've already built. EVs are very good at that. It's still most of the time. You have a big window to charge them. You don't need to be charging them when you're doing other things that require electricity.
Gotcha. So this decision, so this plan, not just about money and investments in chargers, but also policies that incentivize people to charge at different times that could just be better for all of us.
That's right. Yep. Paying
Gotcha.
people to do what I just described, for example, whether that's through discounted rates or through direct payments for control of charging, both on the residential and the commercial side.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, let's talk about some of the other pieces. So I mentioned again, this is a plan that has it used to be three different plans, but they've brought them all together. We just talked about the electric vehicle component of it. But Ed, why don't you first, of course, introduce yourself, a little bit background, and then we've got the what oftentimes referred to building electrification or sort of clean heat components. We've got the energy efficiency side. So why don't you talk a little bit more about the next bucket after you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Danny. So my name's Ed Carley. I'm the Senior Building Decarbonization Policy Advisor at Western Resource Advocates. And WRA fights climate change and its impacts in the West. So clean heat is really about the resources that we use to meet the state's clean heat goals and how we get off of natural gas. So do we use efficiency and beneficial electrification, or do we use other solutions like recovered methane that are more expensive and don't really reduce CO2 emissions? So this plan is for 2020 through 2030. It's the second clean heat plan. There is a clean heat plan in place right now. There's rebates available. If you want to replace your furnace, I encourage you to do it. The sooner you do it, the better. But so clean heat is really, from our perspective, about replacing home and building space and water heating equipment with things like heat pumps they don't have local emissions, and they're much more efficient than gas appliances. So in Colorado, cold climate heat pumps are the most appropriate piece of equipment to heat a building. And it's really about what kind of resources do we make available to consumers in the state who want to replace their furnace with an electric appliance. And so we advocate for good rebates to make that more affordable for people.
Sure. So implicit in this one is this idea that we should be moving away from what many of us have traditionally grown up with, a gas furnace or gas to heat our water, and switch over to more of these electric technologies like heat pumps. A big picture, why is that important? Why should we be doing that as a community, as a society, as a state?
Sure. So residential, commercial, and industrial buildings in Colorado are responsible for about 21% of our emissions. And that's according to the Colorado Greenhouse Gas Inventory. And so, this is a big source of emissions in the state. And cleaning those emissions up is vital to eliminating our carbon pollution here and for addressing climate change. So, starting to take advantage or starting to shift to those electric appliances allows us to take advantage of our increasingly clean grid here in Colorado. So, the first half of 2026, we had 53% wind, water, and solar clean, no emission grid. And so, if we can use that to heat our homes, heat our water, charge our electric vehicles, we can go a long way to reducing emissions. So, in addition to that, getting individual households off of natural gas protects us from the wild swings that we see in fossil fuel prices. 2022 there were huge spikes in natural gas prices, and you know, as so the U.S. has become the leading exporter of natural gas in the world, and that's going to drive up costs domestically. And we're unfortunately continue to build out export terminals on the Gulf Coast, and so that other people in other countries want to buy that gas, and it's going to cost more because we're exposed to the world market, just like we are with gasoline prices. And add on to that damage to Middle Eastern gas export infrastructure from the Iran war. It's hard to say what's going to happen with methane or natural gas. The main component of natural gas is methane.
Hmm.
So it's really important to protecting consumers from wild price swings to just start to move to our electric grid, which when you have wind, water, and solar producing most of the energy, you know what it's going to cost. There's no fuel price. It just stays basically the same.
Yeah. Yeah. I know I just made a switch, not just in about 18 months ago, I made a switch to a heat pump. And part of it is just, peace of mind to not, this is a combustible fuel. Like I definitely like that I no longer have that gas underneath my home and some of the indoor pollution that comes from it. I guess what does success look like in this area? So, when a decision's made, when a decision is approved, I guess in winter, spring, what will success look like for you then and a few years out when the program's implemented?
Sure. So the success from this filing looks like setting the state on a case, or excuse me, on a pace to meet our 2030 goal of 22% emission reductions, and then really setting us on course to meet the 2035 goal, which is 41% emission reductions. And so if we can get this right, we can set ourselves up to make it to those targets. And that means less pollution contributing to climate change, but it also means, addressing things like local air pollution. The last month we've been getting ozone alerts on our phones where I live in the Denver metro area. And add on to that the wildfire smoke. We also know climate change is impacting our communities, it's impacting our farmers, it's impacting our mountain town economies, it's impacting our lungs.
Hmm.
So it's about setting ourselves on course to meet those goals, but also really reducing the pollution that we experience in our homes and in our communities. And I think that's really the thing to keep in mind is it sets us on
Yeah.
track. And yeah.
Yeah. What's a one thing or two things that could help us meet that goal? I mean, Joe was talking about charging, more charging, filling
Mhm.
gaps for the clean heat. Is a lot of it just incentives to help, people make the switch to a heat pump?
Yep. Continued rebates to help people make the switch over to a heat pump, cold climate heat pumps and heat pump water heaters, continuing to expand rebates to properly insulate our homes and other buildings, ensuring that electrical systems in the home and other buildings are ready to support a heat pump. Um, and again, like making these changes has lots of benefits, cleans up the air, but for communities, like I mentioned, the mountain communities earlier, folks in those homes may not have needed air conditioning before, but you noted earlier that, or I think Joe noted that our high temperatures are increasing, and that happens up in the mountains too. And where they might have used to open the windows to cool things off at night, maybe that doesn't work, or maybe the area is full of wildfire smoke. A heat pump also works as an air conditioner in the summertime,
Yeah.
so they can stay cool, but they can importantly use an air filter in the heat pump to clean up the pollution and keep themselves and their families safe.
Yeah. Is there any pitfall we should be watching out for in this in this? Is there anything we could do that would actually not be that helpful in terms of getting us away from that gas grid that we've relied on?
Yeah, so the plan that Excel has put forward doesn't meet the 2030 goal or the 2035 goals. That's a big problem, and they rely heavily on recovered methane. And that means we have to keep spending on money on maintaining our gas system that the state law says we need to move away from. And that's not a great solution for us. It's likely to drive up costs as we have to maintain two systems.
Yeah. Recovered methane, can you just what picturing it like things produce methane, so we're recovering it and using it. Is that kind of what
S-
that means?
So a lot of it that Excel is proposed to use comes from cow manure. So
Oh, okay.
so they want to use cow farts.
And
And
so, and that's not necessarily bad, right? Like we want to capture that methane, but maybe not appropriate in terms of counting it for building electrification. Is that the rub?
yeah, so it um I mean that methane has impacts in the climate and in the atmosphere. But capturing it is and adding it to the current natural gas distribution system is expensive.
Mhm.
And when you burn it, it does still produce carbon dioxide. So, and again, you have to maintain the natural gas system. And a lot of the expenditures required to maintain that system drive our rates.
Mm.
So, for that reason, or those reasons, we think it's important to move away from recovered methane.
I see. So we'd be missing an opportunity to actually cut costs if we just found a different source of fuel for those pipelines, especially if that source actually isn't one of the contributing factors to the building footprints. Um, so that makes sense. Let me turn to Ramon. Why don't you? There's kind of the third piece, which kind of overlaps with the second piece. This generally energy efficiency. So if you will just introduce yourself, and then this, is often referred DSM, energy efficiency. Talk a little bit about what that plan might look like.
Sure thing. Thanks, Danny. My name is Ramon Alatorre. I'm the senior program manager for the utility program at the Southwest Energy Efficiency Project. We usually call ourselves SWEEP. And SWEEP's mission is to advance energy efficiency, beneficial electrification, and clean transportation in the region that we work in. So, yeah, thank you. You're right. There's sort of a third piece to this. I'm actually going to be talking about perhaps the most legacy piece of these three plans. So the electric sort of what we call demand side management or DSM. It's energy efficiency and it's demand management. All kind of talking about the electric system. A lot of what Ed was talking about was more the gas system, or for a lot of customers that are combination customers where they receive both their gas and electricity from Xcel. The part of the plan that we haven't necessarily talked about yet is like what's sort of just on that electric side of the company. And so it's a lot of energy efficiency programs. The company has been filing DSM or energy efficiency programs since I think about 2008. So we're almost 20 years in. Every single year that they have been running these programs, there have been benefits to customers, benefits to the grid. We say that it's been cost effective. Every dollar that the company spends, we're getting more than $1 worth of benefit. Means we don't have to spend that dollar on supply side resources, building new capacity, whether that's from thermal generation units or even needing fewer solar panels and things of that. There's just less needed on that side when our homes are more efficient. Um, and so what we've seen for the past almost 20 years is a portfolio developed by the company. And in this plan, they're proposing to continue running all of those programs. There's something like 10 different programs on the business side. So if you are a business, a commercial customer, there's 10 different programs for you and millions of dollars uh, to be able to support energy efficiency sort of at your businesses. And they also have 5 different residential programs as well. And so these are sort of bread and butter programs, a lot of things to be able to make your homes more efficient, thinking about weatherizing your home so that it's less leaky, so that it's better insulated. And it does include appliances and that as well. There's probably going to be portions of heat pumps here if you're somebody in Colorado that heats your home with what we call resistance or like electric baseboard heat.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily that customer that's got that gas furnace that's looking for a heat pump, but you're a customer that's got an electric uh, form of heating your house, where if you go to a heat pump, you can really benefit from the efficiencies of that heat pump.
Yeah.
They use far less electricity than electric resistance heat. So there's a lot of things in there that again are sort of bread and butter, and we're looking at it to see, are we kind of continuing along the same trajectory? They definitely interact with all of the things that Ed was talking about.
Yeah.
Um, and the other wrinkle that I haven't quite talked about yet is the demand management piece that
Okay.
sort of sits in this electric DSM bucket. And demand management, people are probably most familiar with thermostat programs. If you have a smart thermostat, you could potentially enroll it in a program where the utility is able to send out a signal and say, "Hey, the grid is stressed out right now. If your thermostat can respond, it'll relieve the stress that the grid is experiencing." And when you sort of aggregate all of these thermostats together, that once again could mean we have this callable resource. That means we don't have to build that next thermal plant because we can call on all of these thermal resources, and it can be megawatts worth of reduction in load. And
Yeah.
so the company has had a demand response program that they've been building up, even in other types of filings and dockets. The aggregated aggregator virtual power plant was recently adopted, and I think we're going to be seeing elements of that in this program as well. And I might be preceding one of your questions, but one of the things that we're seeing in here is the existing demand response that the company has been able to call upon has been in the range last year of like 25 megawatts, and what they're or no, I may be getting that wrong. Um, they're looking to 3 to 4x essentially the amount of demand response that they're going to
That's great.
be able to have under their control. And so I would say that that's maybe the new thing and what I've been calling bread and butter up to this point.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, you did a great job of just talking like energy efficiency. While it's the third thing we're talking about, it should probably be the priority. Like before we build anything, we should just be as efficient as possible. I mean, it's like the best kilowatt is the one we don't need to use. There's no
Right.
pollution associated with it, all that. So yeah, so energy efficiency. So thanks for describing that. And so then I guess for this, is it just what we want to see is just a really big program? Like we just want to spend as much money on this as possible. I guess you mentioned the um, just going larger on the being ready for those peak hours, having programs for that. But what's success look like to you at the end of this docket?
Yeah, that's right. It's almost hard to overspend on energy efficiency. Some of what can be the barriers might be honestly the ability to spend the money, having the contractors that are um, just the workforce able to just sort of do all the work. But like I said, every time we review the spending and the benefits, it always comes out positive for energy efficiency. The utility spends that dollar, and I say, even if it's a dollar and a penny in benefits, like that's a benefit. We're glad that they've done that. But these programs are regularly coming out with you spend a dollar and you're getting $2 to $4 in benefits for the system. So they're incredibly cost effective. Some of again the guard or not guardrails, but some of the roadblocks are just the ability to do all of the work fast enough. So
Yeah.
we would like to see continued contractor engagement and training to try to like build up that workforce so that all of the energy efficiency spending is able to get out the door and be effective, that we have quality installations. We certainly want to see the amounts of the budgets maintained and even grown. Um, and yeah, that's kind of what energy
Yeah.
success looks like, is just to continue to grow all of it.
Yeah. And one thing I did there's another talking utilities video I did with the director of the PUC, and she was mentioning the orange alert that we had last August. So last August there was a coal plant that broke down. There was an orange alert, which means, we might not have enough energy, or at least the alert went out for that. And those DSM programs, the things you were describing, the thermostat programs and other things
Yeah.
kicked in, and lo and behold, we had no reliability issues because we had such big investments made in that. So hopefully the PUC takes that as a sign that we should be doing more of that, and that can play a huge role in helping us reduce, the need for all that power generation. So that gives me a lot of heart as well. Let's end this conversation with just so costs. I mean, a lot of what we've talked about in each of these buckets. Investments. So investments, I mean, that's code for oftentimes money being spent. This is oftentimes customers whose, it's going to be our dollars that are being spent in different ways, in investing in maintaining a safe, reliable grid. And so I think, somebody watching this goes, a lot of this sounds good, but what's it going to cost me? I think one thing I always like to remind people is that, unfortunately, the way the PUC process works, you don't actually know what the bill is necessarily. Like, we don't know exactly what we're going to pay during this planning process. There's a second process, as I understand, that's more kind of the rate setting process. But if you care about the rates, then you should certainly weigh in here. But when it comes to these, I mean, on one hand, we have, our energy grids creating pollution and fueling climate change. So clearly we need to do something to act. And a lot of the things we've talked about today will help us reduce that pollution. But there's also probably cost savings embedded in this as well. So I guess, Joe, going back to you on the electric vehicle side, just if somebody's talking about costs, what are a few things you might say about that?
Yeah, I think it's start, and perhaps repeating myself, but important to remember the EV programs can create benefits for all electricity customers. They bring new revenue onto the electric system, and when that charging is managed well, they can help the grid be more efficient. Xcel projects that its transportation electrification plan is going to place downward pressure on electricity rates. So perhaps make bills more inexpensive, not make them more expensive, especially in its later years. There's a legal cap. So under state law, Xcel can't spend more than 0.5% of its annual revenue on EV infrastructure anyway. But staying under the cap doesn't mean every dollar is well spent, automatically. So when we get into this proceeding, we're asking some questions, right? Are we subsidizing customers or projects that don't need it? Are we complementing or duplicating other sources of funding from the state or the feds? Is Xcel asking for more than it needs for these projects? Are incentives too generous? Are private companies putting enough money on the line, skin in the game? And we just want to be in that sweet spot, right? Where we're not overbuilding, not overspending, but we also aren't just reactive to the immediate need for EV charging. The TEP really should be a proactive driver of EV adoption that can help us attain our long-term goals, which in Colorado are decarbonizing the transportation sector. That's what I think about when I think about costs in the TEP.
Yeah, it is amazing to think about all the pollution we currently produce with our vehicles. And if you could shift those vehicles over to the electric grid, just the amount of pollution we would avoid. It really is something impressive if we can, make that a big switch.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Ed, same question to you. I mean, again, the building side, how do costs play into this?
Yeah, so you're right, it's impossible to tell what the overall program budget is going to look like and how it's going to affect overall bills. The commission will debate that and it'll be up for their review. But um, again, it's worth noting this plan combines what used to be three separate plans. And um, so now it's all rolled into one. So I can't tell you what the overall cost is going to look like, but this plan and its overall filing is unique in that it's talking about how much money is going to flow back to customers. So these are flowing back to customers, or what we sometimes call ratepayers in PUC world.
Yep.
but that's you and me basically.
Yep.
And so ratepayers, customers get that money back in terms of rebates to help pay for, um, things like heat pumps, things like EV chargers in their homes, things like insulation that helps keep your house cool when the air conditioner is running too, since less air is getting out and less hot air is coming in. It also keeps wildfire smoke out because you can, you know, run that air through your air conditioner air filter. But so this plan really focuses on returning money and to ratepayers in terms of rebates and incentives to make improvements to your home or building.
Yeah.
Um, so, as a result, someone who wants to make these improvements can save thousands of dollars. The clean heat program is currently active, the first clean heat program. Like I said earlier, we're talking about the 2028 to 2030 plan in this filing, but there's an active plan right now. So if you want to see what those rebates look like at present, you can see those and you can take advantage of them. And, there's other programs out there. I want to say this because I think people should try and electrify their homes right away. It's just get moving. And there's generous rebates out there, but there's rebates from Xcel. The Colorado Energy Office has rebates um, available there's only a small amount left. They could run out soon. So if you want to electrify your home, go do it quickly. Those are only available outside of the Denver metro area, though. In the Denver metro area, the Denver Regional Council of Governments, or DRCOG, has rebates available, and there's a state tax credit. So you don't have to wait for this 2028 to 2030 plan. Um, so I wanted to make that pitch, but it will be a challenge to predict what the overall cost will be. But the thing to remember is those costs are also investments going back to individuals to make improvements and reduce their own pollution and exposure to things like the fossil fuel volatility that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, yeah. And to your point earlier, I mean, the more significant shift we can make, the more people who can shift over, then as long as we do this right, we might not even have to maintain some of that gas system because people won't be using it anymore. That'll be a huge cost savings as well.
Yeah.
Ramon, I mean, energy efficiency is all about cost savings. So I mean, it's just basically like, as you said before, hard to overspend. The investments have brought, benefits back, but anything else you want to say about costs when it comes to the energy efficiency programs?
I really liked what Ed was talking about. This program really is focused on customer programs. It's actually called like the Integrated Customer Programs Plan, the ICP. So it's different than some of the other proceedings that show up when we're talking about like what is going to happen on the poles and wires, or what's going to be the types of like resources that are providing the electricity and things of that nature. So I think it's kind of interesting to know that this is about, it's a customer's plan. It's a little bit less of a systems plan. Of course, has systems impacts. But when I was mentioning cost effectiveness before, like some of what's going on in those calculations, they are thinking about like what is the alternative way to meet this need. So let's say we need 100 megawatts. We can either get that by investing in energy efficiency and demand management, or we can build another power plant. Like those are the choices, because the load is growing in Colorado, and what's the cost effective way to do it? The cost effective way to do it is with energy efficiency, demand side management, demand management. So if those are actually the two choices, yes, both of them require an investment, but one of them's a more affordable investment. So it's important to keep that in mind. The number might be eye-popping, but the alternative number is a larger eye-popping number
Yeah.
when you consider it. So I guess that's what I would leave it with.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, our state's been growing, and so we've had to invest in our grid. And to your point, you can invest in a way that's more cost effective and will reduce pollution, or you can do more of the business as usual. Well, I appreciate you all's time. So I'll get some links from you all, any reports you've done or any resources you have. I'll put those into the check out the bottom here if you're watching this on our YouTube channel for some of those links and information. And yeah, we'll keep you updated on our YouTube channel here as that process goes forward. We expect, there'll be a number of steps, some public comment opportunities, public hearing, hopefully, and then a final decision will happen sometime in the winter or spring. And again, this will really just determine a trajectory, a couple year trajectory. And it's just amazing to think about, if we can do this right, the amount of pollution that we can eliminate in our state, pollution that's fueling our dirty air days, that's fueling the extreme weather from climate change, but also do it in a way that can help people upgrade their homes to more clean, energy efficient homes. There's a lot of opportunity here. It's not everything, but it is a pretty big step, and these three plans coming together will make it very important. So definitely encourage people to weigh in, and we'll give you opportunities on how to do that as well. So thank you, Ramon, Ed, Joe, thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you everybody for watching this.
Thank you, Danny.
Thanks, Danny.
Appreciate it.